Hey party people, welcome to my channel. I'm Kitty. If you're a returning subscriber, you get a gold star today. Today's video is going to be about Ben Shapiro because honestly, I love to hate him. So we're going to react to his new video about transgenderism because when is he not talking about trans people? But before we get started, don't forget to give me a like and subscribe to support my channel and to help fight the TERFs. I laughed as soon as I saw the thumbnail, so. The tragic truth behind transgender movement.
You are about to watch an episode of my awesome new series, Debunked, if I do say so myself. Seriously, we are very proud of this show. Every episode, I dismantle and debunk a common leftist myth in 15 minutes or less. If you like what you see, head on over to dailywire.com/subscribe. Use promo code DEBUNKED for 20% off. Become a member today, because you can watch the entire first season right this instant. That is correct. You can binge the entire first season right now on the Daily Wire. Go to dailywire.com/subscribe.
One of those that he debunks is systemic racism in the police force. Conservatives really just choose to be blind, don't they?
Today on Debunked, we're going to discuss a very common question. Can a man be a woman?
Someone who identifies as a man is a man. Someone who identifies as a woman is a woman. What's so hard about that?
Dr. Levine, do you believe that minors are capable of making such a life-changing decision as changing one's sex?
Well, Senator, thank you for your interest in this question. Transgender medicine is a very complex and nuanced field.
The specific question was about minors. Let's be a little more specific since you evaded the question.
She didn't even get started with her answer and they already cut her off.
Support the government intervening to override the parent's consent to give a child puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and/or amputation surgery of breasts and genitalia.
First of all, minors do not get surgery. You do not get transition surgery as a minor. His question is already irrelevant.
Senator, transgender medicine is a very complex...
The answer, clearly, is yes, as Levine even told a former Trump administration official. Just pause on that for a moment and think about how crazy that is. Now, in the past few years, you've heard a lot of statements that sound like we must not raise boys as boys and girls as girls because we just can't be sure that kids actually have the sex assigned to them at birth.
I think what people are saying is don't impose gender norms on children, like making boys play in the dirt and making girls play with dolls. Just let them do what they want to do, let them wear what they want to wear, as long as it's not hurting anybody. There's nothing wrong with it.
You've heard that some people are men in women's bodies or women in men's bodies. You may even have heard that if you're a straight dude and you don't want to have sex with a trans woman, meaning a biological male, this makes you gay.
That makes you gay. Oh my God. I thought he was gonna say transphobic. Woo, but it makes you gay. Wow. Never heard that one.
All of this is insane, patent nonsense.
The two sexes. We've been over this. There is not just one sex, Ben Shapiro. Sex isn't binary either.
Males and females reproduce with one another in the human species. We've known this for quite a while. The simple reality is that the human species is sexually dimorphic. Sex is binary. We come in two brands, male and female. Typically, those who have the XY chromosomes are male. Those who have XX chromosomes are female. Males and females differ. They differ in size and shape, in musculature, brain function. As neuroscientist Steven Pinker says, differences between the sexes are part of the human condition.
So glad you explained that for us. This knowledge that we learned in elementary school. Thank you.
There are certainly people who have anomalous genetic conditions, like Klinefelter Syndrome, in which a person has two X chromosomes and a Y chromosome, and in whom breast development looks female while male genitalia are present. Overall,
that just goes to show that sex isn't binary. There's a lot more besides Klinefelter syndrome as well.
Disorders of sexual development affect 1 in every 5,000 births.
Okay, 1 in every 5,000 births. They say that like there's nobody, but there's 7 billion people in the world. That's a lot of fucking people.
Now, the presence of abnormal development does not mean that sex is a spectrum. To suggest otherwise, it would be the same thing as saying that because one child every few thousand is born with 3 toes, this means that the number of toes in the human being is a spectrum.
Isn't everything a spectrum? Almost. Damn near everything's a spectrum. Stop with the black and white thinking, Ben Shapiro.
Or that a person with 3 toes might actually be a sloth human, a 3-toed sloth human.
What? Being transgender doesn't compare to being another animal.
All reproduction is rooted in the presence of sexual dimorphism. To pretend otherwise is biologically nonsensical.
Actually, not every animal is sexually dimorphic. There is reproduction without a lot of dimorphism, and there's also asexual reproduction as well. Ben Shapiro thought you loved your biology.
That's why, to end a conversation on transgenderism, just ask for a simple, non-self-referential definition of the terms man and woman. When I say non-self-referential, I mean you can't say, I feel like a woman, therefore I am a woman.
And again, Ben Shapiro does not understand the difference between sex and gender.
For advocates of biology, the answer for what is woman or what is man is simple. You can look at chromosomes, SRY genes, reproductive systems, verifiable answers to the question. For advocates of the position that some biological men are women, or vice versa, there is no standard that can be applied. A man can become a woman or a woman a man at any time without any stable definition of man or woman whatsoever.
Once again, biology student here. Ben Shapiro doesn't know what he's talking about.
So according to our pseudo-medical activists, gender identity is completely separate from sex. The separation between gender and sex relies on a simple fallacy, that gender is entirely socially constructed and thus separate from biology.
Yes, that's why they teach it in sociology and not in biology.
Gender, in this iteration, would be all the various feminine qualities that adhere to womanhood, or the masculine qualities that adhere to being a male. According to these folks, gender and sex are completely different.
Because they are.
Right? All of those gendered notions of femininity, they're completely separate from being a biological female. This Cartesian notion that you can be a woman in a man's body, a soul in the machine, because your gender is separate from your sex, is utterly unsupportable at any level. Everyone understands there are some attributes that are generally considered more masculine. Chopping wood, being dumb.
I'm whizzing with the door open.
The fact that he just attributed being dumb to being a man as a cis man saying this really speaks for itself. Why listen to Ben Shapiro if Ben Shapiro himself thinks he's dumb?
And I love it!
And some that are considered more feminine. Being caring, being nice.
Oh, so if you're a man, you can't be caring or nice. That's what women do. That's for women. Women only.
Here, in virtually all cultures. Some of that is undoubtedly biologically oriented, and some is undoubtedly social construction. But it is simply ridiculous to suggest that if a boy is effeminate, he's actually a girl. Or that if a girl is masculine, she might actually be a boy.
I don't think anyone is saying that. Some women can have masculine traits, and then there are trans men that were more masculine before they came out.
The origins of the gender identity movement lie with a professor of medical psychology at Johns Hopkins in the 1960s. His name was John Money. After twin boys were born, and after a botched circumcision destroyed one boy's penis, that boy was raised as a girl. By the time that boy was a teenager, the boy felt extraordinary discomfort because he was biologically male, and his parents told him the truth.
That really doesn't compare because he was forced to be raised as a different gender. If he identifies as a man, then he's a man. Of course, he's going to feel dysphoria being forced to be raised as a woman or a girl. I guess he's a kid, so I guess they think trans people don't experience that same dysphoria. Literally, like I feel like this is more so just like proving his point rather than disproving it.
Both twins ended up killing themselves in their mid-30s.
What? We just gonna throw that out there? No trigger warning. Doesn't even seem relevant.
Stop John Money from founding the Johns Hopkins Gender Identity Clinic in 1965. His theory was children could identify as members of the opposite sex, and that radical surgery was the proper solution. That inside, these kids were members of the opposite sex in reality, and that surgery would merely make their bodies align with their identity. Money claims that, quote, the gender identity gate is open at birth for a normal child, no less than for one born with unfinished sex organs, and would stay that way for at least a year. So in other words, you could have a full biological boy with finished sex organs, and his gender identity was still open. Brains and bodies were considered in direct opposition, completely separate from one another.
Yes. He listens to the science and then is just like, no, this is silly.
Radical feminists like Judith Butler began arguing that all gender was socially constructed, and that therefore all inequalities in outcome between men and women could be laid at the feet of an evil, sexist society.
Yes. Gender was literally constructed to oppress women, which then later led to oppressing gay men, which then led to, just homophobia in general, and then transphobia, and it just builds off of each other, but it was literally designed to oppress women. That's exactly what it was constructed for, and that's what you learn in sociology if you ever study sociology, but Ben Shapiro is a fucking idiot.
If gender is a meaningless social construct created by society, why does it matter more than sex, which is actual real biology? And why is gender more real than biology itself?
It's like, he kind of gets it, but he comes to a different conclusion.
Why would anyone need to change his or her body in order to align with gender, a social construction, when gender and sex are completely separate in the first place?
He's about as dense as a brick.
Gender dysphoria, which is what we're talking about here, is a serious and tragic disorder. It is also extremely rare. According to the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual 5th edition, those who had received a diagnosis of gender identity disorder or transsexualism and were seeking hormone treatment and or surgery represented just 0.005 to 0.014% for males and 0.002 to 0.003%.
That's just people who have access to get a diagnosis and the proper care. There's a lot more beyond that. That's not accessible for everyone, especially here in the United States where we don't have universal health care. I feel like that now he's just being a bit ableist. And again, like I said earlier, there's 7 billion people in the world. A small percentage is still a huge amount of people.
Those stats are now rising dramatically.
We have that big announcement from an Oscar-nominated actor announcing he is transgender. Elliot Page came out publicly with a post about his identity.
And in that post, now liked nearly 2.5 million times. The more I hold myself close and fully embrace who I am, the more I dream, the more my heart grows, and the more I thrive. And guys, that's what we love to see.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. And if you haven't seen my Elliot Page video, you should check that one out.
He is going to help so many. Janae, thank you so much.
People suffering from gender dysphoria, which, in its non-politicized definition, means the persistent belief that you are a member of the opposite sex, have a tragically high suicidal ideation and depression rate. That suicidal ideation rate remains tragically high after surgical and hormonal treatment.
Because the world is still transphobic and they're still trying to take trans rights away. That doesn't just go away because someone got surgery.
Longitudinal studies that are good just do not exist on the efficacy of these measures. And the mental health problems associated with gender dysphoria remain extremely damaging, even in particularly accepting societies. But suffering from a mental disorder does not change your underlying sex, any more than believing that you are Napoleon Bonaparte makes you Napoleon Bonaparte. Transgender activists make an objective claim about reality, based on subjective internal feelings. That's unsustainable. What's more, transgender activists demand that you abandon reason, biology, privacy.
Privacy? You abandon privacy? Then please explain the laws where they are wanting to check children's genitals to make sure that they're actually the sex of the sports team they want to play with. Who's abandoning privacy?
Even the ability to raise your kids in concert with reality in favor of a delusional quasi-religious worldview in which gender and sex are completely segregated and a boy can be a girl and a girl a boy. Now, none of this means that anybody suffering from gender dysphoria ought to be mistreated. Anybody with any sort of disorder ought to be treated with nothing but sympathy and care.
He's like, you guys should be treated with sympathy and care, but I don't think you should have rights.
But this does mean that a society that seeks to propagandize to children that they can switch their gender is both lying to kids and doing them psychological harm in the process.
He says that coming from the party with the most propaganda.
Unfortunately, that's exactly what our society is now teaching kids in public schools. Anti-biological nonsense, including the lie that you might just be a different gender with different pronouns. And it's not just that. With the new Equality Act,
the motion is adopted.
The Biden administration and the Democratic Party are seeking to promote the idea that any institution that doesn't mimic these lies has to be destroyed. Religious institutions are not exempted from federal regulations that demand that men who identify as women be treated as women.
The Equality Act is to protect the LGBT plus community, especially considering there are several states right now trying to take healthcare rights away from trans people, especially trans girls and trans women, and they are attacking trans minors, which is just really not okay. And there's been several kids who tried to take their life after those laws got passed by their states. So that's exactly why we need the Equality Act, to protect these people.
True in sports, in restrooms. Ironically, feminists who sought to protect women from men have now seen female spaces completely destroyed because they can't define female and male properly. Most shockingly, we're now a society that demands that parents hand over their kids to the tender mercies of political actors masquerading as medical specialists. If you have a 12-year-old at school with a headache, the school nurse cannot prescribe to them Tylenol without calling you first. But we now have officials in states and in the federal government suggesting that if a 12-year-old says that she is a boy, the school should be able to prescribe puberty blockers without calling a parent.
I personally think that's okay. A lot of people aren't accepted by their parents, and a lot of people have transphobic families, and I just don't think that we should take these rights away from children just because their parents are terrible people.
That is a sick society. In the end, a man claiming to be a woman is making an unsustainable claim. He can't even know what it is like to be a woman because he is not one. A man with surgeries and hormone treatment does not become a woman, nor does a man who simply declares himself a woman. All of this is insane propaganda and is being propagated for political purposes. So, no, a man cannot become a woman or a woman a man.
That was his new lovely show, Debunked, and I learned nothing. And on that note, there is some app, I don't know what it's called, it's like UberDuck or something, that you can type things in and it will come out in someone else's voice, and I found several of Ben Shapiro, so I'm just gonna play those for you because they are really funny, and that's how I want to end the video today.
I'm very small and my penis doesn't work.
That one's gotta be true. This one is my personal favorite.
Let's say hypothetically, I have one mommy milkers.
That's it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to give me a like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you next time.